In today's episode, we're going to talk about floating pond islands. Today's question comes from a Joan Smith off of YouTube, and let me read it to you here. She says, I'm very new to the ponding habit, and I bought a floating island bog at one end of my pond. Her pond is about 2.5 feet by 8 feet, and it's a couple feet deep, so it's not very big. And she says she attached some 1-inch tubing underneath the floating island in a zigzag pattern, and she's running about 150 gallons per hour through that. She has 2 small goldfish and 3 mosquito fish, and she wants to know, is it enough filter for the pond? Do you agree? She also has an air stone underneath the floating island, and she says, of course, she planted it as well. So this is a really good question, Joan, and welcome to the ponding habit. I think that's a great way to put it, because it does become habitual. You want to go out and you want to hang out by the pond. You want to feed the fish. You want to watch the bog plants flower and grow. You want to anticipate the change of seasons, and it is a habit. So welcome to it. I want to talk about islands. To answer your question, I think it's plenty for the amount of fish that you have right now. I do suspect that you will probably end up with more fish, and at some point you might outgrow the filtration capability of your floating island, and you might need to, add some more filtration to your thing. So I want to continue on with islands here, and I want to tell you that a lot of people, they fantasize about having an island in the middle of the pond. Now her pond's small, and she's using the floating island as an ecosystem to help manage the water quality. On larger ponds, people, as I said, they fantasize about having an island in the middle where they can have a bridge and they can go out to the island. And unless it's a big pond, it's really hard to pull off unless it's heavily planted. If you have a pond and it's heavily planted with tropical plants all over the place, and you have some cool way to get out to the island, then you have that illusion that you're on an island. You have that fantasy, but it's pretty hard to pull off on a pond unless it's, say, half acre or more, a third of an acre. That's when it becomes a little easier to pull off that illusion where you have a little dock out there and so forth. But I think floating islands is really a great tool. And the neat thing about floating islands, there's really good ones out there, and then there's not so good ones out there. So you have to do your homework when buying a floating island. The floating island, if it's done correctly, it creates new habitats for wild birds. I mean, there's some companies that are doing these huge floating islands. I'm talking like the size of an acre, where that floating island goes out there, becomes a new habitat for endangered animals. And I think that's fantastic. In our ornamental backyard ponds, I think a floating island is really a great tool to help manage the water quality in the pond and give us a neat look out there. And it's not necessarily an island that you would walk out to, but you'd have this island of plants, especially like in a dedicated koi pond where you have steep sides, but you still kind of want some plants. If the pond's big enough to have an island floating out there, it's a pretty cool look. If you do have air, as she mentioned, coming up from underneath there, and the air injecting into the roots, the thing is, that the island should be about this thick, and it has foam and has spots to put aquatic plants. You can even put planting soil and media inside the specialty areas, and then when the plant starts to take hold and the roots start to come through, you get this ecosystem effect, and it starts to pull nutrients out of the pond and becomes a fantastic filter. So I think floating islands are a really cool addition. One thing I do want to be careful about, people try and makeshift their own floating islands. I actually saw one floating island probably 5 years ago. It was made out of an old oak wooden pallet, and it was actually pretty cool. I don't know what they did exactly in there to get it to float, and it didn't look that great because it was in a swimming pool that they had converted into a pond, so they had this island out there. But I just thought it was interesting because once it was planted and there was a trunk of driftwood hanging off and these cool plants growing off it, you couldn't really tell that it was a wood pallet. I had to really look at it to check that out. So the DIYers I want to talk about, that's where I was headed. If you're going to do something like that. You have to be careful about using a monofilament or a fishing line to hold that island in place, because a skimmer might pull it in, or if the wind might blow it over to the side of the pond. So you gotta want to anchor that thing so it stays out in the middle, right? So if you're in an ornamental backyard, I just want you to be careful if you're using monofilament or fishing line, because you could damage your fish. If the fish are swimming into that string, they're not going to notice it with some algae growing on it. They might hit that string. So if you are going to do something DIY and create an island, use something thicker so if the fish bump into it, they don't get hurt. So that's it for the islands today. I think it was a great question, Joan. Once again, welcome to the habit, the ponding habit. She's going to be a pondaholic before you know it. Here's my question of the day for you. And it's off topic. It's going to kind of be a curveball for you. I want to talk about music. What kind of music do you like? What kind of music are you listening to? What's your favorite? Are you versatile? Do you like everything from country to rap? Are you a heavy metal rocker? I want to know about what you do, what you listen to. Do me a favor. So tell me your favorite genre, and tell me if you were to hop in your car right now and push play on your Bluetooth audio, what song would you put on and what would you be rocking? Okay? That's it for the day. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again real soon. I'm Eric Triplett, the Pond Digger.